The teller's voice was cold and dismissive. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't allow this withdrawal without further verification." People in line stared. Whispers filled the air. The woman in the sleek navy suit didn't flinch. She simply placed a card on the counter, looked the teller dead in the eye, and said, "You might want to verify it quickly, because I own this bank." Vanessa Carter's day began like any other. She had woken before sunrise, answered a stack of urgent emails, and attended to high-level conference calls from her home office before the city was fully awake. By mid-morning, she was in the back seat of her black sedan, on her way to a local branch of a bank she had visited countless times before. The plan was simple: withdraw $200,000 in cash for a confidential acquisition deal she was finalizing that afternoon. To her, such an amount was routine. But as the sedan pulled up to the polished glass doors of the branch, she could not have known that in less than half an hour, her morning would become a public lesson in both assumption and authority. Her driver stepped out and opened her door. Vanessa emerged in a tailored navy suit, crisp white blouse, and low-heeled black shoes. She carried herself with quiet confidence, the kind that comes from years of navigating boardrooms, where she was often the only black woman in the room. Inside the bank, the air was cool, the marble floors gleaming under the soft sunlight pouring through tall windows. The faint hum of printers and soft murmurs of customers created a calm, ordinary rhythm. Vanessa took her place in the short line, her mind already running through the points she wanted to emphasize in her afternoon negotiations. She had precisely 35 minutes before she needed to leave. When her turn came, she stepped up to the counter where a young teller, Andrew, sat. He did not look up at first, tapping away at his keyboard with a bored expression. "How can I help you?" he said flatly. Vanessa placed her ID and a small slip of paper on the counter. "I'd like to withdraw $200,000, please." The words made Andrew pause mid-keystroke. He finally looked at her, eyebrows slightly raised. 200,000. She met his gaze steadily. "Yes." He typed something into his computer, his expression tightening. Then he glanced at her ID again and frowned. "This doesn't seem to match our records," he said. "Are you sure this is your account?" Vanessa kept her voice calm. "Please check again. The account number is correct." Andrew waved over another teller, who leaned in, whispered something, and then nodded in agreement with whatever he saw on the screen. Andrew straightened and spoke louder, his tone edged with suspicion. "I'm afraid we can't process this without more reliable identification." The volume of his words carried to those waiting in line. Vanessa could feel the shift in the room. An elderly man near the front glanced at her over his glasses. A young couple exchanged whispers. "More reliable than a government-issued ID?" she asked, her voice low but firm. Andrew shrugged. "Ma'am, for all I know, you could have gotten this account information from someone else." The implication was sharp, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she simply said, "I'd like to speak with your manager." Andrew gave a small, almost amused nod. "Sure, rules are rules." A few minutes later, the branch manager, Daniel, appeared. He wore a fitted grey suit and a polite smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "What seems to be the problem?" he asked. Before Vanessa could speak, Andrew jumped in. "She's trying to withdraw $200,000. Her ID doesn't match our system. I think it could be fraud." Daniel took the ID, examined it briefly, and looked back at her. "Do you have proof of ownership for this account?" She raised an eyebrow. "Other than my name, my signature, and years of transactions." Daniel clasped his hands. "We just have to be sure. Perhaps you could come back with a cosigner or additional verification." The suggestion was absurd. A cosigner for her own account. Vanessa felt the weight of the lobby's attention, every customer now a silent spectator. She leaned slightly toward Daniel, her voice cool and deliberate. "I suggest you complete this transaction before this becomes a bigger issue than you're prepared for." Daniel shook his head. "We have to follow policy." Without a word, Vanessa reached into her leather bag and drew out a sleek black folder. She placed it on the counter and slid it toward him. Daniel opened it, and the confident composure on his face vanished. Inside was a corporate ownership certificate listing Vanessa Carter as the majority shareholder and chairwoman of Carter Financial Group, with a detailed list of subsidiaries including the very bank they were standing in. For a moment, there was complete silence. Andrew's smirk dissolved into disbelief. Daniel blinked rapidly. "You own," she finished. "For him, yes. I own this bank, and over 50 others. Before you accuse a customer of fraud, you might want to review your own company's ownership records." Daniel stammered. I wasn't aware." Vanessa cut him off. "That's clear. You didn't want to be aware. You made an assumption, and in doing so, you insulted not just a customer, but your employer." She turned her gaze on Andrew. "You'll be attending customer relations training twice." The air in the lobby was thick. Daniel quickly processed the withdrawal himself, counting out the bills with unsteady hands. Vanessa stood quietly, her expression neutral, the faintest trace of satisfaction hidden behind her calm exterior. When the cash was ready, Daniel slid the envelope across the counter. "Here you go, Miss Carter. My deepest apologies." She took it without looking at him. "Daniel, consider this a performance review. You're on probation." With that, she turned and walked toward the exit, the sharp click of her heels echoing against the marble floor. Her driver was waiting at the curb, holding the car door open. She stepped inside without a backward glance. By the end of the day, whispers of the incident had spread throughout the bank's internal network. Employees at other branches were retelling the story in break rooms and over coffee. By week's end, Vanessa had ordered a company-wide training overhaul, focusing on professionalism and eliminating bias in customer interactions. The policy changes were swift and mandatory. She never returned to that branch not out of fear, but because she knew her point had been made. Respect, she believed, should never be optional. And sometimes, the quiet truth was more powerful than the loudest confrontation. That morning, in a room filled with strangers, the truth had spoken for her louder than anything else ever could.